Welcome to Beyond the Competition, the SAE University Programs Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode, and we got a special edition here. You know, as the season, we're getting some very event-specific conversations going on today, and today is no different as we're going into the Formula SAE events. There's a lot of changes, a lot of evolution in the process, and we got a great crew with us. The endurance event captains are with us today. Laura Krauser, how you doing, Laura?
Great, how are you?
We have Matt Kalmus.
Hello.
And also Cory Johnson joining us today.
Hello, thank you.
Excellent. So again, always interested to see how the process is evolving, any improvements coming from year to year. And I know you guys are interested in communicating the new processes and communication about the endurance event that's happening first here at the Formula SAE IC event here in May. So let us know what's going on.
So as we do every year, we get together and we try to look at the competitions past and decide how can we continue to improve the processes to meet the goals, which is to make sure that we have great running dynamic events during the event so that everyone gets an opportunity to participate and to do their best possible work out on track. Some of these things that we've changed that I think some people remember is moving the endurance event to the infield so that we could have more cars on track at the same time, increased our throughput, allowed the day to end a little bit earlier. I don't think any students would remember the event that ended at 9 p.m., but we do because we were there 10 years ago or whenever that was. So one of the things that we're looking at this year is figuring out how to maintain what we've built up, which is an event that runs fairly quickly on Saturday. We've been finishing around 1:30 on Saturday for the past 3 years, mainly because we've been very fortunate that there have not been any massive on-track incidents, and Mother Nature has cooperated, which is rare for the Michigan competition in May, and hopefully she continues to be kind to us going forward, but you never know. But basically, we've built this up so that we can adapt if we do have either of those situations arise, and then the event can go a little bit longer if needed, and we're still finishing in a reasonable time for the awards ceremony, for scoring, for all of those things that we need to do after we basically finish up endurance on the day. So I'm going to kick it over to Matt or Cory to talk through what we are looking at with our scheduling structure to help better communicate to the teams.
I can start here a little bit and let Cory weigh in, right? And Laura, what we've really been talking about now over the last couple of months is helping teams really have a better visibility into where they need to be when, so that they can work back from their sort of time on course, right? And the way we've been doing this is we've been trying to really model how long we think it will take for each of the run order numbers to start, what time of day that'll be approximately, and then start to help give you steer as a team for when do we think you need to be at the gate, when do you need to be at fuel, and then let you plan for that to make sure you can get to fuel and practice, back to fuel, back to the stage gate, and then to staging and sort of into the hot start line with enough time to plan, right? We realize in the past, the way you've done that is the announcer says, fuel run order is number X to Y, you should go to fuel, and you may not realize you're about to go, and then you've got to collect your stuff, scurry over to fuel, and hope you got enough time. And if you want to get to practice for a shakedown first, which almost every team does, it just makes that a rushed experience because the site at MIS is pretty spread out. So, Cory can speak to how we've been doing this, but we've been working hard to try to use some of the historical data and what we've seen as be the fastest sort of running times to give you a steer of where to be when.
Right. So we took the past, I don't know how many years of data to know that we have an average run time on every car. That changes throughout the day. Cars in the morning, there tend to be more breakdowns in the morning, and the cars in the afternoon tend to run a little faster. So it varies, but as an average, we took that, and then we discussed with our fuel helpers about how long it takes for them to fuel a car on average, and a number of other points of data. And we tried to create a model for when everybody needs to be where they need to be. And then we took that model and pumped out a number of times so that we can assign those times to the different run order vehicles. And so what I think you'll see, because we're not going to give a specific time to every specific car, we're going to group them up into groups of 3 or 4 or 5 or 8, who knows. We haven't really decided that yet, but there will be groups of cars, and they'll be assigned a time to get into the fuel line so that you'll be able to get through there in a good amount of time to get over to the gate, to check in at the gate, and get into the cold staging and do all the normal processes after you get into cold staging.
And what we hope this will do, right, is we'll create a little bit of clarity for you so you can plan, right? Where do I have to be when? How do I need to make sure I get over to practice at the right time? Have a sense of where should your team be? Where do you need supplies, right? You're not pushing your push cart left and right everywhere, right? Running around. So hopefully it'll just make it a little bit easier for everyone and avoid surprises, right? And we're taking on a little bit of that on our side, right? Obviously, and we'll have to stand by things, but we also want to create flexibility in the system, right? So we'll publish these times when we've got a run order, right? So once we actually know the run order is 80 cars, 90 cars, 100 cars, 110 cars, whatever that number is based on cars on site through all of the technical inspections, right, by the Friday evening cutoff, then we can say, okay, here's the run order as we would normally publish. And then attached to that is where we'll put this information, right? But we also realize things change. It might rain, snow, sleet. There might be a track stoppage. Whatever happens may happen during the day on Saturday, right? So we will also have to then alert you if something changes, right? And in reality, the change will be a delay much more likely than a pull forward, and we'll manage that right on our side. But if, for instance, I don't know, it pours for 30 minutes, knock on wood that it doesn't, and we have to shut down because of lightning or things like that, and we stop for an hour, we'll obviously shift the time so that way you're all not trying to get into the fuel line while it's pouring, right? Like we'll have to say we're taking a pause, right? Times will shift back by 30 or 60 minutes, and we'll notify everyone of that, right? And we'll push that. We're working through how we'll push that, probably through the app at a minimum. Potentially we'll have a sign at the gate or other places to say, hey, here's, we're currently working on schedule or 30 minutes behind schedule or something like that, right? And so we just want to make it really easy for teams and yourself to know where are we against the schedule if the schedule has shifted back, just so you're not showing up, 2 hours early for your slot and just sitting in cold staging, watching other cars start while you could be potentially, in your paddock or somewhere else just being productive or just enjoying watching other cars run from a better vantage point than, behind a whole bunch of stuff.
So I think kind of getting into the nuts and bolts and what people really understand, how does this impact what we do with the penalties? And the penalty that's in question around here when it comes to being on time is whether or not you get the starting penalty. And the starting penalty is issued when you are not ready to start the event, when you are called forward to take the green flag. So that could be because you aren't physically there, or because your car stalls and it can't be restarted and you can't get out on track. Those would be the reasons for the penalty. So that stays as it's always been. The difference here now is that we are going to be providing this schedule about when you should be entering the gate, and we will take that into mind. So for some reason that we end up running very early and we are looking for cars that haven't quite hit their gate schedule time yet, we would not be issuing a penalty to somebody who hadn't hit their gate entrance time if we needed them before that. We also are going to hope we're never in this situation, because we'll be paying attention and probably throttling who we have on track and working through that to keep us running to the schedule that we've laid out for ourselves. But, this is one layer of protection, if you will, for the teams to make sure that they can know that, this is when we need to be inside the gate. If we aren't there before this time and they need us before this time, we'll be safe when it comes to the starting penalty.
We didn't specifically mention, we will not be planning to pause for lunch. We're going to plan to run straight through. If something happens, if there's a track shutdown for weather or a vehicle incident or any other reason, we may reconsider that at the time. If we have in the morning at 10 a.m., we have like an hour and a half shutdown for, a vehicle fire or something like that, then we'll probably call to have lunch. But as it starts out, the initial plan is no lunch.
And I think, right, as we've looked at the times, right, it ends up breaking for lunch for that hour and a half adds another, I can't remember how long it is, but it's like 30 to 60, at least 30 minutes to actually just the hot time of the day. And right, essentially with the ramp down and ramp up, it's at least 30 minutes. It could be more, up to an hour. And so this just makes everything so much more efficient. And like we just often find those off and on times change the course dynamic, right, for the teams running as well, right? You end up with some teams that are running with 10 cars on course and others that are running with 2. And we just want to try to make it also as consistent as possible for all of the teams, right? So that way, if you're right before or right after lunch versus slightly before that or slightly after that, you're not getting a disadvantage or an advantage versus the teams that are running there, right? So it's consistent for you. It's more consistent for the track, right? It's a little easier. Honestly, I find it sometimes just safer because we don't have those on-off. People are a little bit distracted as the course workers are in different stages, right? So we can sort of keep them moving and in a flow versus them thinking their car's on track or anything like that. I think the other thing, just a couple notes, is pink vests, right? I know we've talked about these. Maybe I should have worn my pink shirt today if I planned farther ahead when I packed the other day before I traveled. But I think one of the things is that, like, we've often said, hey, the pink vests are all around, right? And we're the folks that are on course or near course or at events that can help you. And the thing that we have to do is a few things, right? Make sure you're getting the right information from the right person in the right pink vest, the right place. And like, that's not all on you, right? That's on us to make sure we don't share things that are outside of our knowledge or our purview, right? So like, that's an us thing to solve for. But also, like, what's the question you ask them, right? Like, they should all know, and we'll try to push very hard. What is the universal delays to make sure they all know? If you go to fuel, you go to practice, you go to the gate, they all know, oh, we're running on time. We're running 30 minutes behind schedule. Everyone should know that. That should be fair. And then the other thing is, how do we make sure that pink vests also, you get the right information to them? So at fuel, if you ask them, hey, what do you do about, I don't know, delay penalties if you're out of order at endurance? One, they may or may not know the answer, but like, please come to us at endurance to ask that question versus ask them. While they might give you an answer, it may not be the answer. And then you'll end up in the pink vest told me this thing. I don't understand why Matt or Laura, after the event, you're telling me something different. I'm confused, right? So no, I think our ask to you is like, the pink vest at the event you're at and having questions for is the person in charge of that event, or, one of the two or three. And those are the folks to go to for that event. Across events, they may be slightly farther away from the specificities of the operating sort of procedures. And then it becomes a communication breakdown potentially. And just our best guide is to try to ask questions pertinent to that person's event to make sure you're getting answers, or ask them, hey, can they get in touch with the endurance event to ask a question about a thing, right? So that way they can call us on the radio, right? Like, we're all accessible. They know who we are, and vice versa. And we can get you the right person as well, right? It doesn't have to be that you will have to wander around to find that person. They can reach us on the radio, on the walkie-talkie. They can text us on our cell phone, right? And we can find a way to make sure you get the answers for the question you're looking for solved, or find the right person. So, I guess my ask there is like, ask them a question they can answer, including, hey, I have a question for endurance. Can you help me find the endurance captains to get that answer? It doesn't have to be, I have a question. Can you answer it in front of me because you're a pink vest?
Yeah, I think it's probably good to talk about a little bit on how that does work. So Saturday, the things that you're going to travel through, right? You're going to start out in the paddock, get your car unloaded. You might choose to go to practice as your first thing that you do that day, which we encourage if you have the time to do that. It's a great way to do a shakedown and make sure your car's functioning.
As you know, Ren's schedule, I think it'll show they'll open around 7:30. And like, they move fast on Saturday, right? They're going to move as fast as they can to get as many of you through a shakedown. But you're also not going to have a lot of time on course the way you would on a Friday over there, right? So on Thursday, Friday, it'll be set up in its sort of normal straight on the back straight, right? Sort of back straight beyond where the autocross sort of photo area is, over by gate 12, if I'm remembering correctly, on across the course. Not that you guys all know the gate numbers, but essentially in the southeast corner of the site, right? And so practice over there, they got a lot of space. On Saturday, it's up much closer to fuel, but it's really going to be a shakedown, right? It's get out, make sure things work. I'm not dropping oil. Everything's bolted on, right? Warm up the engine for 2 minutes, a minute, right? And sort of get over to fuel for your sort of final turns fill. So they're going to be moving with pace, because what we don't want is everyone to go to practice and get all backed up with practice, or not get a chance to go to practice and you want to, because there's a whole line over there. So the team at practice is aware that we're going to be moving with pace to the event, and they'll try to help also make sure that they don't become a bottleneck in the whole process on Saturday morning.
Yeah. So practice to fuel to come over into staging. And staging is where you really enter in what is truly the endurance event once you get through the gate. So each of these different things that you're doing are led by different people. So there are captains for all of those steps along the way, and they are, in charge of their specific event. We work together as a team on Saturday as best we can, but we are not usually physically located near each other. So we are in touch either by radio or cell phone, as Matt had mentioned. So these are important things to keep in mind, that when you are dealing with the different spaces, that you are dealing with a different group of people that's in charge of those spaces. And ultimately, the application of the rules per event is the responsibility of the captains of that event. So the three of us here on this podcast are the ones that are determining what's go, no go for endurance, and how we are able to judge if a team is on time or not. And I think that's part of the background of some of these things we've looked at with this. Now that we've given teams a gate time that we expect they should be coming through the gate and entering into the endurance event, then we do take away some of the confusion around, well, hey, I'm running to this and fuel knows I'm here. And that's great. They'll be looking at the run order. They'll be prioritizing cars that are going next. They'll be working with all those things. But ultimately, it's up to the endurance captains on whether or not you came into the endurance space and were ready when we called you. So this is some way to allow you more things to plan around, ultimately understanding, though, that it is the team's responsibility to know when they're supposed to, where they're supposed to be when, and to make sure that you're on time.
To fully exaggerate this point, what Matt was saying about asking questions of the right people. You wouldn't go to practice and ask them about the business presentation. You wouldn't go to practice and asking about, the cost event, right? So don't go to anybody and ask them really about something that isn't part of their purview or their knowledge base. Okay, go to the right area to ask the right question. We do talk to each other, and we can try and get you, without having you run halfway across the site, an answer to your question. But also keep in mind, we're all busy. And if we're really busy, we may tell you to run halfway across the site to get that answer because we don't have it. And then the last point I've got that we didn't really cover is we've talked about this run order, or not run order, but these times that we're going to give you as to when you need to be places. How do you get that, right? When do you get that? Where do you get that? You're going to get it with when the run order is released on Friday night. These times and these groups for entering fuel will be on that run order this year. So that's where you get that.
Let's reiterate, what are those contact points for notifications and things for this event, just as a quick recap going out the door?
Just a couple things, right? Well, look at the run order. We're going to get information to you, right? As we get on site and we have the drivers meeting, we'll lay it out and we'll talk you through it with sort of a bit more visual, make it easier to show, right? So please, obviously, come to the drivers meeting. We'll put some information in the pre-post for the drivers as well. In general, of just like, look, this is changing. Here's what you have to look for. Here's where you'll find information. So as we finalize all this, keep your ears sort of and eyes tuned. If you've got questions, right, the drivers meeting will be a great place to ask them, and we'll be there for any questions, right? If before or during the event as this comes up, right? We want to make it easy for all of you, and just look for those times. If you hit your times and you sort of work back and have a plan, I think this will be great and easy for you, and it'll make you sort of have an easier, smoother day on Saturday with fewer surprises. It's our first time doing it this way, right? Can't promise it'll be perfect, but we hope it'll be better than how it sort of felt on the other side before, when you're kind of hurry up and wait. So that's our goal. We want to make it better. And as you've got ideas and ways to make it smoother, feel free to sort of send those suggestions along, right? We always do a survey after the event, things like that. And it's a great thing for the sort of the free response area to add suggestions.
Excellent. And then as this podcast is coming out and people are listening there, maybe they're on the way to the competition in the shop and they have any questions in advance in response to this, where should they go for that?
Yeah, I mean, there's one or two ways we can do it. Since there is, if the question is specific to something that is in the actual rules, I would suggest you follow the rules inquiry protocol, submit it via the website. If it's something just specific to this podcast, that's not necessarily rules related, it's just more of a need to know, curious type of conversation, then you can email the collegiate competitions at SAE.org. And I would suggest putting in your subject line the, FSAE May Endurance Podcast. Something that just helps us easily identify it, to know it's probably a little bit more of a priority since the event is approaching, in 3 weeks.
Excellent. Thank you, Kaylee, a program manager for Formula SAE, for chiming in on there.
Actually, on site, we do a lot of course setup on the days leading up to the dynamic events on Friday. So we are usually, people can find us, especially if we do any course walks or things along those lines. And we're happy as long as we're not in the middle of trying to place water barriers or something where we have to pay attention to our surroundings. We're usually happy to chat if people have questions or thoughts on what we're doing here. And one thing I think it's really important to also mention is a thank you. So, we talked about all the various captains that are involved on the things that happen on Saturday. They all have contributed to the discussion leading up to this, coming up with this idea. They, identified that the communication could use improvement for sure. And that will not only help the students figure out when to be in endurance on time, but to also help all of us operate well that morning and then leading up to the event when people are coming into the endurance event gate. So we three get to deliver the message today on the podcast, but there is a whole group of people that are part of the brainstorming for this and making sure that everything runs smoothly. Representation from the announcer, practice, fuel, the gate, which, believe it or not, we have a captain of the gate too. So we've got everything at Formula SAE.
Everybody, thank you so much. Everybody involved in the endurance event here today, and hopefully it helped clarify some things about as we go into this year's competition. So in the meantime, and for any updates about everything around the competition that you're involved in, please make sure you're following the news feed and you've downloaded that Formula SAE app, and also keep an eye out on the YouTube channel or on the podcast for Beyond the Competition and the YouTube channel for SAE University programs for information like this. And of course, there's going to be the CDS Action News for any last minute updates as well that we do monthly. And just keep an eye out. Make sure you're informed. Make sure you read the rules. I know we always hear that. Read the rules. Read the rule book going into this. And thank you, everybody. And on behalf of everybody at SAE University Programs and everybody working on this event, make sure you stay safe out there. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Competition, the SAE University Programs podcast. Show notes for this episode can be found at beyondthecompetition.fireside.fm. Remember to stay tuned for updates on your competition's news feed or app, and follow SAE_University Programs on TikTok and Instagram. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next episode.